Lesson 4: Basic Checkmates and Stalemate. Part 1. Basic Checkmates. King and Queen versus Lone King. Concepts. What is a checkmate pattern? Using the Queen. Coordinating and using your pieces together for a planned goal. Step 1. The pattern. Queen moves a knight's check move away from the king. See white moves 1 qd3. Here we will continue our study of the chess basics. Now that we have taken the steps needed to learn how the game is played, the next step is to learn how the game is won. Without knowledge of the basic checkmate patterns and principles, it is hard to justify learning anything more advanced. Why learn how to win a queen if you can't even checkmate with a queen right? Our first example shows an excellent starting position for learning, practicing, and mastering the basic checkmate. King and Queen versus King. There is a simple pattern and process for white to win this endgame 100% of the time. The imaginary box or force field. The position continues after 1 qd3, diagram 1 key 6 2 qd4. When white moves the queen forward just one square at a time, whether diagonally or horizontally, as long as the knight's distance is maintained, she, the queen, creates an imaginary box or force field around the enemy king. By repeating this pattern, the queen is able to force the enemy king to the edge of the board, and eventually the corner, all by herself. Notice that a lone king is unable to attack an enemy queen without moving into check. This is key to understanding why this pattern works. By following a natural set of moves such as 2kf7 3k5 knights check, 3kf8 4k6 kg7 5qf5 kg8 6qf6 kh7 7 qg5 we reach our next diagram. Copyright, ChessKid.com page 1 of 10. Lesson 4. Step 2. Stop the queen, bring in the king position resulting after 7 kh8. You will notice that once the black king has been forced to the edge of the board, it is no longer necessary to use the knight's check pattern to make the box any smaller. In fact, if the queen were to move to g6 after black plays kh8, the game would end in a stalemate, which is a draw-tie game. See Part 3. Stalemate for a more detailed description. Instead of making the box smaller, it is now time to activate the king. First, recognize the best square S for the king to shoot for. Hint: the king needs to find a square close enough to eventually protect his lady, the queen. Follow the stars and reach the moon. White's winning path is highlighted with stars. Because we cannot bring the queen any closer without immediately ending the game in a stalemate, we must find another way to make progress. It is very important that the queen does not start giving random checks to the enemy king. In fact, if the king and queen checkmate pattern is executed properly, the only check given throughout the entire game should be checkmate. The white queen needs protection in order to move forward. Displayed with stars is the quickest route for the white king to join the fight. In following this straight path, eventually the white king will find himself in direct opposition to the enemy king and in a great position to protect his queen. Step 3. King helps the queen, ending the game as a team position reached after 8kf2 kh7 9kf3 kh8 10kf4 kh8 11kf5 kh7 12kf6 kh8 13kf7 kh7. Note: 13qg7 immediately delivering checkmate was also possible in the variation given beneath our diagram. However, here we see the most ideal position for learning the king and queen versus king checkmate pattern. White has 3 options to end the game: 14qg7, 14qh5, 14qh4. You can now practice this position alternating the corner where you trap the king. Similar final positions, with 3 ways to play checkmate in one move may also be: white king g6 and queen e7, black king g8, white king b6 and queen d7, black king b8, etc. Copyright, ChessKid.com page 2 of 10. Lesson 4: Basic Checkmates and Stalemate. Part 2. Basic Checkmates. Rook Roller, 2 rooks versus Lone King. Concepts. Coordination and cooperation with your pieces. Using the rooks. More checkmate patterns. Step 1. The pattern. 1 rook at a time. Leave the king behind in the above position. Black has no choice but to move to the c-file. When checkmating the enemy king with 2 rooks, there is a very simple pattern to follow. The first thing to realize is that you will not need your king to execute this particular checkmate pattern. To highlight this point, we have set up our first diagram with an ideal position for our rooks, but no white king. Secondly, remember that a rook does not have to be close to the enemy king in order to force the king to do what the rook wants. A rook on b1 controls every square along the b-file, which means an enemy king must find a safe square on one of the adjacent files. either or c. When rotating rook checks always led with the rook on the furthest file after 1 kc6 white played 2 rc2 leaving the b-file under control. By leading the attack on the king with the rook that was furthest away, the a-file rook was farther from the c-file than the b1 rook. White is beginning to push the king toward the opposite edge of the board, eventually landing on the h-file. It is very important that the rooks remain close together, taking turns to deliver the vital check. This pattern can repeat itself, without interruption, until the black king has ventured close enough to deliver an attack against one of the rooks. Copyright, ChessKid.com, page 3 of 10. Lesson 4. Step 2. Separate and coordinate. Again C position reached after 2k d5 3 rd1 key 4 4 re2 and 4k f3. After black reaches his goal of attacking the led rook, white must, for the first time, separate the rooks. Note: if black were not aggressive in this manner, the game would end quickly with the rooks repeating this rotating check pattern, and eventually delivering checkmate on the h-file. The stars on e7 and e8 highlight the best two squares for the rook on e2. After 5 re7, for example, the enemy king faces a tough decision. Stay near the first rank, preventing the coming rf1, or race to the far side of the board, with hopes of catching the e7 rook in time to delay checkmate for a little longer. The enemy king's tough decision C black chose 5k f2, preventing rf1. If instead black had chosen 5k f4, attempting a quick jog to the other side of the board, we see the rooks use the rotating checks pattern, even at a distance. White continues 6 rf1 kg3 7 rg8 kh2, and instead of 8 rh1, losing the rook, the white rooks rejoin forces to finish the game. 8 rf7 followed by 9 rh7. After black's more stubborn move, preventing the rook from checking on f1, white brings the rooks 6 rd8 back together and prepares for their final rock and roll tour. Step 3. Rock and roll. Rooks love the edge of the board. Climax rotating check sequence, position reached after 6k f3, with the final 3 checks occurring on f8, g7, and h8, in that respective order. The black king is helpless. White kicks off the final rook roll with 7 rf8 kg4 8 rg7 kh5. The black king is almost close enough to delay the inevitable once again, but not quite. 9 rh8. As with our first two patterns, your opponent's willingness to work with you is irrelevant. This mindset is very important for a chess player's overall approach and improvement in the game of chess. It is good to develop plans of attack that don't depend on your opponent being lazy. Copyright, ChessKid.com, page 4 of 10. Lesson 4. Basic checkmates and stalemate. Part 3. Stalemate, no legal moves explained. Concepts. Basic concept, definition and examples of stalemate. Stalemate. Example 1. With black to move, the game is over, a stalemate being the final result. When a player whose turn it is to move has no legal moves by any of his/her pieces, but is not in check, a stalemate has occurred, and the game is a draw, tie, with each player receiving a point. In our first diagram, the white queen on b6 controls every possible square that the black king can move to, and is therefore placing black in stalemate. This common stalemate position can occur when white takes the knight's check pattern too far. See Lesson 4, Part 1. Stalemate. Example 2. With black to play, a stalemate has once again occurred. Notice that black would be in stalemate if the white king were on b3 or a3 as well. With black to play, the position on the board is a stalemate. The white king guards b2, while the white queen is controlling all of black's remaining options. The black king is not in check, so we can see the difference between this position and one where the white queen is delivering a checkmate, on c2, for example. In this position, we can see the negative effects of not using our suggested pattern in Part 1, but instead using the king and queen together to box the king, where they inevitably step on each other's toes. Copyright, ChessKid.com, page 5 of 10. Lesson 4. Stalemate. Example 3. Black has no legal moves, as white controls every square. In this extremely improbable yet not impossible position, we see an extravagant example of stalemate. Every square highlighted by a star is controlled by one or more of white's pieces, and though white would have multiple mate-ins if it were white to move, with black to play, this position is a draw. One very important step in your growth as a chess player is the understanding that you don't need to capture every enemy piece in order to checkmate the king, and therefore win the game. This position should display the risks of having too many pieces and not executing a basic checkmate pattern, perhaps one learned in parts 1 or 2. Stalemate. Example 4. This famous stalemate occurred in Troitsky vs. Vote 1896. Example diagram 4 reveals that not all stalemate positions occur in the endgame. Black's last move was 1qxd1, capturing white's sacrificed queen and placing white in immediate stalemate. Though white has many pieces, none can move. The rook on h1 is trapped. The king cannot move without being attacked by the h3 bishop. The knight on g3, bishop on e1, and pawn on f2 are all pinned to the king, which means they cannot move without placing their own king in check by an enemy piece. Finally, every other pawn is simply blocked by an enemy piece or pawn. Example 5. Common stalemate misunderstanding. The above position is not stalemate. One common mistake made in regards to evaluating whether or not a given position is stalemate is shown here. Though the black king is trapped, having no legal moves, there remains other pieces that must move. White will follow with checkmate on g7, f8 or e8 next move. Obviously, to determine whether or not a position is stalemate, one should always look at the king's position, options for the king to move, and whether or not the king is in check. However, as we learned from the last two diagrams, the king's position and ability to move is not the only thing that determines stalemate. Copyright ChessKid.com, page 6 of 10. Lesson 4: Basic Checkmates and Stalemate. Instructor's Guide. When teaching the basic checkmate patterns, we recommend that students first memorize the 3 steps, may also be referred to as rules or principles, associated with each different checkmate. The coach's instruction demonstration on either a demo board, projector, or in some other group learning format is most effective when a child has no experience. Subsequently, students should practice the position with a partner, preferably another student trying to master the same technique, alternating offense and defense a minimum of 3 to 5 times. We recommend having students move quickly from learning stalemate, part 3, to the practical checkmate or stalemate worksheets. Without the immediate application of their newfound knowledge, the differences between checkmate and stalemate will generally become confused in a child's mind. Coaches will find themselves answering many raised hands, all with some version of the same question. Is this checkmate? Or perhaps, am I stalemated or checkmated? Practical notes and advice. Lesson 4. Referencing the invisible force field the queen creates around the enemy king can help stimulate the imagination and the child's interest level when learning this basic checkmate pattern. Part 1. Reminding each student that no check should be played by the queen until checkmate can help instill discipline in the child's thought process. Part 1. Allowing the students to practice this checkmate pattern. Part 2. Using only the 2 rooks, without the white king on the board, can help the learning process. Until the children have developed a better understanding of the pattern, when stumped, children may reach to move their king rather than make the necessary effort to realize coordination between the rooks. Students should move directly from part 3 to checkmate or stalemate worksheets, ideally before the end of a class session, while the ideas and differences between checkmate and stalemate are still fresh. Copyright ChessKid.com, page 7 of 10. Lesson 4. Lesson 4. Checkmate or stalemate. In each of these positions, the black king is in either checkmate or stalemate. Circle the correct answer beneath each diagram. Circle the correct answer. Checkmate or stalemate. 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 Copyright ChessKid.com, page 8 of 10. Lesson 4. Lesson 4. Checkmate or stalemate. In each of these positions, the black king is in either checkmate or stalemate. Circle the correct answer beneath each diagram. Circle the correct answer. Checkmate or stalemate. See, circle the correct answer. Checkmate or stalemate. Circle the correct answer. Checkmate or stalemate. Circle the correct answer. Checkmate or stalemate. Copyright ChessKid.com, page 9 of 10. Lesson 4. Basic checkmates and stalemate. Answer key. Worksheet page 1. Checkmate or stalemate. Diagram 1. Checkmate. Diagram 2. Checkmate. Diagram 3. Stalemate. Diagram 4. Stalemate. Worksheet page 2. Checkmate or stalemate. Diagram 1. Stalemate. Diagram 2. Checkmate. Diagram 3. Checkmate. Diagram 4. Stalemate. Copyright ChessKid.com, page 10 of 10.
In this position, queen moves g3. Nessa posição, a dama joga em D3, fazendo movimentos que fazem lembrar o do cavalo, né? Na teoria de peões, de Mazilis, eles chamam de rei peões, de reis e peões, eles chamam de casas conjugadas. Essa casa aqui, ó. Casa conjugada, mais ou menos para ganhar oposição. Aqui no caso é para cercar, né?